Good, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's so great to connect with you. We were just chatting for a few minutes and doing a big catch up because going from talking to you at least a couple times a week when we collaborated, you were my longest running intern for how many years? I think like almost 4 years, right?
I think it was about 4 years. Yeah, it started my sophomore year of college, in between my freshman and sophomore year that summer, and then I wait until after I graduated. So yeah, almost
That's
3 and a half
excellent.
years.
Yeah, so many, you became such a crucial part of Angles and Insights and Newport Interactive Marketing Networking Learning Community, and actually did a lot to launch ROI and U, which is amazing. And I'm just curious, how are things going before we jump into grad school and making the decision for grad school, which,
Mhm.
was always a big investment, but let's backtrack and just hear how things are going now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in my final year. Next semester will be my final semester. I'm at the University of Texas in Austin, getting my master's in advertising. As I was telling you, it's been a really good ride, but a long one. That I'm really excited to kind of wrap up this chapter and move on. But I really enjoy learning, and I think that I've been able to learn so much more just in an extra few years of school. But I'm ready to kind of, close this chapter and use all of the knowledge that I have learned, both from school and then also working with you over those 3.5 years, and start, applying that in a full time position. So that'll be soon. Be job hunting here shortly.
That's fantastic. And last summer, you branched out and you got an internship with a pretty big agency. What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am working for a company called Pixel, and it's located in Nashville. And I had an entire spreadsheet set up with all of the internships I was applying to. Honestly, it was probably around 50 near the end of
Wow.
the I guess it was the spring semester, and I ended up, interviewing with a lot of different companies, but Pixel really felt like the right fit. It was a remote position. Since I currently live in Austin, I didn't want to relocate for an internship, which I worked with you remotely for those 3.5 years. So I felt very comfortable working remote. So I was trying to find internships that, were remote as well. And then, so once Pixel offered me the job, I was really excited to be able to work for an agency and get some experience doing a lot of copywriting,
Mhm.
and working on some different clients. And I actually decided to continue the internship into the school year, just a low amount of hours, just because school is crazy busy. But I don't like to be bored, so I like to take on extra projects, and they definitely have stuff for me to do. So just working with that right now.
That is fantastic.
Mhm.
What would you say was really helpful going into your interview process? Some of the skills that maybe you got when you were interning with Angles and Insights?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with all of it, I was really organized, and I also did a lot of research. I think when I was working with you, I did a lot of research just to know, the trends and what was going on in the field, and also just like new tools that were coming out, and how teaching myself how to do things in a way, because I think that's like one of the best parts of an internship is you get to learn so much. And so that skill of research really aided me when I was looking at companies, and before the interview, I would do so much research on, the company itself, understanding what their mission and value is, and then, what other people are saying about the jobs that they've had there before, the questions that they've gotten asked, and I created this huge document of notes to prepare myself to have these conversations. And I really try to combine my experiences working with, Ankles and Insights and NIM, and comparing that to, a question that they may ask or a value that they have, and pairing those together so that, when they did ask those questions, I was ready to have a whole story and anecdote to tell them on how I've used my skills in the past. And I think that really helped to demonstrate, that I was prepared to take on a lot and jump right in and not have to, I guess, require a lot of training. I
Mhm.
think that's, like, the big thing, is that they don't wanna have someone who they have to train for, 6 weeks before they can start. I was able to, do do a week of kind of getting acclimated with how their processes run. But after that, I, quickly jumped in, and being able to tell them that I was ready to just jump in, I think was a really big advantage and what made me stand out in my interviews.
That's awesome. And then
Yeah.
how did it work? I think over the summer you had made a comment about the volume of work that you were able to do and how much they were giving you and what they were expecting from you. It was a little bit boring in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I work pretty quickly. Just I like to, scratch the tasks off my list of things to do. And I don't think they were necessarily expecting someone to work that fast, but I had to ask for more work. And I think it's just because, especially when I was working with you, I think I took on a much larger role in terms of like the strategy that went behind. Whereas when I started working with them, it was more of a task based of what they needed help with and less of like the actual planning. And so I just wasn't used to that smaller role yet. So I would, it would be Monday or Tuesday and I'd have my work done for the week and I'd be like, is there anything else I can help with? And when you're working 20 hours a week, I feel like I don't know. I think it's important that you're using that time wisely and actually getting tasks done. And the way they do their tracking system is you track per hour, which is very common with like freelancing. You track how many hours you work, and so I'd spend the blog post 3 hours working on it, but maybe they think it would take me more, and so I was just kind of having to have a conversation with them to better understand my workload capabilities and how much I could do. And I think that's important conversation to have when you're getting ready to start an internship is those expectations. I know we had lots of conversations about, setting expectations for myself and you setting expectations for me. And I think it's important that it goes both ways so that
Mhm.
I think that helps kind of make sure that you're getting the most out of it and they're getting the most out of you.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, internships are meant to be learning experiences. And so if you're not learning, then that feels like maybe a waste of time a bit. So you want to make sure that you're setting those clear expectations from the beginning.
Yeah. Now, are you allowed to talk about like before the summer even ended, they gave you really great feedback?
Yeah, yeah, they were excited to have me on the team, and there was discussion about having something full time after. Obviously, just very early conversations because I am still in school, and so I'm not necessarily ready to start for that yet. But it was really great feedback, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from the team, which is great because I enjoy working with them, and so it's nice to hear, when you're getting that kind of feedback. And I actually saw something a few weeks ago that said to take screenshots of like emails or messages or anything when you get good feedback and to
Mm.
save have a file on your computer, your desktop or a folder in your photos and save those pieces of feedback because I think a lot of young professionals and even like myself, we get imposter syndrome, I think sometimes of when you're
Mhm.
getting all this good work and those compliments and those excited moments can taking a look back at them when you're feeling that like imposter syndrome or feeling like you're not doing good enough to remind yourself that like you're valued and that you're good enough and so I've started to do that, just saving some screenshots so when I am getting down on myself to have those happy moments saved. So
That's a fantastic tip, and I think good for anyone, not just
yeah.
not just a current student, not just a recent grad or emerging professional. Super great tip that yeah, that's one nice thing about technology, right? You can just snap it and save it. And I have thank you notes from clients that I save and
Hmm.
relish. I keep them on my desk and really appreciate that because not every day can be great.
Yep.
And sometimes you just need that confidence booster. I love that.
Exactly, yeah, and it just I don't know, it makes you feel better about this. I think in this field, it's easy to get drained and to feel like maybe your work you're doing something and it's for nothing, and so a reminder of that you're valued and appreciated and that the work you're doing is worth it. I think
Mm.
that's the boost that sometimes you need to keep going, so
That's fantastic. So what about we titled this to about grad school, right? Is grad school
Mhm.
right now? And you were in a unique position where you had applied for grad school before you graduated and before COVID actually hit. So I
Mhm.
think did you have all your acceptances in by the time COVID came through?
Yes, I think I got my final one in February, so
Hmm.
just before things got kind of scary in 2020. I had already planned to, but honestly, a lot of my friends, a lot of the people who I go to school with now did not plan to go to grad school. It was a COVID decision that they had made,
Hmm.
because there was a lot of fears of what the job market was gonna look like during COVID,
Hmm.
and also a lot of schools were being more lenient, I guess you could say, in terms of acceptance. They were looking for students just because with the uncertainty, people didn't want to apply to things or really commit
Ah,
to something, I
interesting. So there's an
suppose.
opportunity there.
There was, and a lot of schools actually got rid of like their GRE requirements. And so I think, for some people it was an opportunity, but for me it was always kind of the plan. I know you and I had discussed for almost a year before that I had intentions of going to grad school, just because I didn't feel like I was done learning, and I wanted to dig into some topics a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, it was an always thing, which may seem crazy to some people because most of my friends after 4 years were like, "I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore." But I was like, "All right, let's do it for 2 more years. No break. Just jump right in."
Yeah, and you know what I think is fantastic about what you've been able to do in grad school is you're not only taking a full load of classes, but how many different classes have you been a TA for?
Yeah, I've TA'd for, I think, 4 different classes,
Hmm.
ranging from communication and leadership. I did a film class, and I'm currently doing an entrepreneur class right now where they bring in guest speakers. And then next semester, I'm doing, currently, I know that I'm going to do a digital marketing class, and then I'll have 2 more on top of it. So I've got to learn from those classes too. Being a TA, you get to not only learn the skills of, being a teacher in a way, but also I'm like taking the course too. So I get to learn that information without having to, do any of the assignments necessarily, but, listen to the information. So,
Yeah, I think that's great. And there's a lot of financial incentives to being a TA too. I was a
hmm
graduate assistant, similar, just not teaching. I was working in student media when I went to grad school at
yeah.
University of South Carolina
hmm
many moons ago, but good to get that out of the way. I know that grad school is often an appealing option, but for people who might not be interested or maybe can't afford grad school, ROI&U is structured so that you can skill up and be workforce ready, be ready to go into a digital marketing role. We have a whole slew of partners who are interested in working with our alumni, and which you predate the ROINU alumni, but
hmm
you are a key player in actually developing this course. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, recent grads and also people maybe who are, transitioning from a different career and want to know more about digital marketing, I think it's such a important skill to have. One of the classes that I'm in right now is in the business school, and it's just one class on digital marketing. That's all they offer in the business school. And my professor was talking about it. He's like, it's a shame because there's so much to learn and dig into. And, a lot of times schools, universities don't value digital marketing, I don't think as much as they should. So
Hmm.
to have an entire course dedicated to learning and getting in depth on all of the different, areas of digital marketing, because there are so many of them, I think it's really important. And also having something that is up to date with the trends and, pulling relevant current information is important because a lot of classes will, be based off of a textbook that was made, even 2 years ago is dated. We were talking about this earlier. Technology, I mean, processes change so fast. So to have, a course that you could take, for 8 to 12 weeks and really dive deeper into some specific topics, I think has so much value, especially for people who don't want to get a whole nother degree and just want to dive deeper into a specific subject like digital marketing.
Yeah, no, one thing, and I'd be curious to get your take. We didn't really talk about talking about this, but I would just, always value, honest, off the cuff information and insights. But one of the things that's come up a lot is getting Google certification and what
Mhm.
you learn. And you did that, right? As part of your classes at University of Kentucky,
I've
or?
Yeah, I've done it multiple times, and it's something that I've had to do for multiple classes this semester is taking different Google certifications and HubSpot certifications. And I think there's value in it. I think if you take the time to do your own research and learning into it, and take notes and really you have to be dedicated to it because I think the problem is sometimes people just want it for their resume or they want it for their LinkedIn page. And I think that's when it gets tricky because, you can blow through it if you really want to and get the certification. But I think the value in it comes if you're taking the time to actually understand it and take the tests that they offer and all of the videos and really taking time to digest that information.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's another point that came up is it's easy to walk the steps, but to actually apply it is a whole different thing. So how would you compare your experience doing these Google certifications with doing an internship like you did with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when I started working with you, I could not even tell you what SEO meant. I had no idea, and so it forced me to kind of do my own research and in combination with having conversations with you, but I spent a lot of time, you know, trial and error going on WordPress and using the Yoast plugin and just reading that information that was on there and testing different things out. And that's how I learned. And so when I look back at the Google certifications, I already knew a lot of that information because I had done it in practice. So I kind of did it the backwards way. But my favorite thing about having an internship and being in school is the ability to learn and then apply. I think that's a really great way to learn. And with school, with just having a class, you don't really do that. Whereas, it's structured more with assignments.
Hmm.
And, I've done some simulations, but it's really not the same as, having an actual job or an internship where you're working with the client to, develop a website or to do paid ads or, social media marketing even and looking at analytics. It's really not the same. You have to have that combination of learning and then also being able to apply it with real world clients.
Yeah, and that's what's great about Newport Interactive Marketing and part of being one of the NIM turns is that you are actually producing the marketing that goes into an event that actually happens. And
Hmm.
there's a feedback loop there, right? Like we could tell, oh, what did we do wrong? Like there's not enough people RSVPing. What's happening here? And you get those results in real time, which is a lot different from doing paper-based learning, let's say.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things I had learned and even apply a lot now is with email marketing. We did a lot of email marketing with NIM and testing out different subject line and doing A/B testing. Like that is something that you learn about, but until you apply it and you can see the results of like what worked better on one versus the other and comparing, like that's something that's a practical skill that like you have to have practice with because you can sit there and draft email subject lines all day. I mean, that's not the hard part. The hard part is understanding what your audience wants, and it's different for everyone.
Hmm.
And so being able to have a real audience, a large audience to send emails to, and kind of being like, oh, interesting, we used an emoji in this one. It seemed like that helped. Or, oh, the copy was shorter in this email. Maybe we should stick
Right.
to shorter form copy. That's the kind of stuff that you don't learn in a Google certification or even sometimes a course. It's hard to know those things. So you have to really be able to put it into practice.
Yeah, and it's super fun. I mean, all the college courses, the semester long courses that I developed were based on that type of principle. And the ROI digital career launcher is also very similar in terms of you are building out real content. You're working on real things. You're working in real time, which I think is just it's so important to understand what you really like. I think getting back to your point about so many different avenues in digital marketing, there's email marketing, there's analytics, SEO, content. It's really, there's such a breadth of, of specialties, right? And so what we do is we try to introduce you to all of those and also have you work with experts who will come in and not only tell you, okay, here's what I think you need to know, but give feedback on the projects that you're working on so that you have that in real time and you're gaining all that expertise. I just was on a call this morning with one of our expert instructors, Mark Collins, who you know, and
Mhm.
yeah, just working on together on a client project and a couple other projects. And he's somebody who this is what he does all day long, every day. He does search engine optimization and
Mhm.
understands how that works. And that is so quickly changing. It's incredible. It's impossible for anyone to keep up with unless you're doing it every day. Or you're working with a team like I do, where everyone is bringing in their expertise, but to have an understanding of what all the different parts of digital marketing are, what the specialties are, which specialty you think you might be interested in, and then to bring a
Mhm.
portfolio into an interview. I'm just curious, what portfolio pieces did you bring, and what do you think resonated?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest thing was being able to list out all the tools that I had experience with, Mailchimp being one of them for email marketing. I think that was surprising, and some of the social media stuff as well. I also had, short form and long form copy based off of, blog posts that I had written for some different clients, and also social media calendars, and copy that had been written. Um, just because a lot of what I do now is like more content based.
Hmm.
And so I was able to kind of show how I can write. I also try to quantify a bit more of the things that we had done. So, how many attendees and stuff for the NIM events. But yeah, and then also some of the graphics that I had created, just kind of showing the range that I had of all of the different digital marketing kind of aspects that I had been able to work on. And just showing that I was ready to jump into any of it. Like I said earlier, showing that I didn't necessarily need to be trained. I needed to know their processes, but I was more than capable of, you know, writing and designing and, things like that. So that was
Yeah, and
mostly
you knew the
code.
lingo, and you knew the lingo and the tools. So it's just, okay, how do they? And it was interesting. I forget what you told me, something about processes, because I'm always trying to work on my processes, and you're like, it's not that bad.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think with processes, like if you have a good one in place, when I started working with Pixel, they had a very good, onboarding process, and I think that is really important when you're starting an internship. It shows a lot about a company,
Hmm.
of how they onboard you because there's that you want them to take time to show that they want you to know these things, not just like hurry up and jump in and get started. Like you want to understand how their process works because that's how you keep everything running smoothly. And so, I had both working with you and with Pixel, I had a really good luck in terms of, having good processes in place. But that was an ongoing conversation that you and I had for years. We were constantly changing, like task management software was best. And I know a lot of companies use different things, but I think, it's constantly changing, which is just so on par for, digital marketing, it's always changing too. So processes constantly have to be updated to make sure that it's, in line with what the trends and stuff are.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, it has to. The process has to change because the technology changes and what works
Mhm,
changes, and it's always a moving target. But I think that's a really great point in terms of understand the company and their onboarding process and what that looks like, so that you're able to learn their systems and bring your skill sets so you
mhm,
can get off the ground quickly. It's interesting. So Karina, who you've worked with, we just spoke with her 2 weeks ago
mhm,
about, she landed a job and
mhm,
things went okay, and then they started to not go okay. And
mhm.
right around that time, she was posting to her Instagram, and a brand that she really loves approached her and said, "Hey, we're looking to fill this position," and she was all over it. She was on it. She's like, "Okay, this is
Yeah.
much more my speed." But just, yeah, the whole idea of, I think there's quite a lot of trauma, I think, that can be involved with a first job, and figuring out, is this the right move? and I've talked about this before that, I had really not a good experience when I had my first full time job. And so I think that's a really great tip and really good advice for taking a look at what that onboarding process looks like. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and you want a company to want you as much as you want them. You know, that's something that I've learned is like going through some of the interview processes. I just like, I don't know, after an interview, you can learn a lot by like how they were treating you and talking to you. And for a first time job, like I'm going to be looking, pretty seriously when I'm considering things like company culture because I am very passionate about marketing, digital marketing, advertising in general. And I think if I'm on a team or at a company that I don't that kind of takes that passion that I have away from me, like I don't want that. It's very easy to get burned out. And I
mhm.
think, company culture plays a huge role in that and how much you're valued. Like I was talking about earlier, having the file with the screenshots. If you're working for a company and you're not really getting any of those screenshots, like I don't know, what does that say? For me, I think that it's an important role, and I think for everyone who's looking for a job, you need to evaluate what's important to you and don't be lenient on that. Don't be like, "Oh, well, the money's good, so I guess, that's okay. I can sacrifice that." I don't think you should have to necessarily sacrifice things these days because there are a lot of great companies out there. So don't sell yourself short, I think.
That is really fantastic advice. Yeah. And I'm so glad that everything worked out for Karina and just in the perfect timing,
Mhm.
because it sounded like a toxic workplace. And I think it's good for everyone to know that that does exist, because I think there's this pressure of like, you just got to get a job and you just got to be there for a year and you just got to struggle, especially now with the great resignation.
Mhm.
People are just not really willing to put up with that. And I think that that's okay. That's good, because that's what's going to force change as well, instead
Exactly.
of people suffering.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm super excited for our next cohort to start, because we do have agency partners who are very eager to hire for full time positions. The challenge that they find is to take somebody who has done the coursework, let's say, and the certifications, but they're not really sure, as you were saying, how to apply that to a client and what those deliverables would look like. Do you have any advice for students or recent grads on, how to bridge that gap if they don't want to do something like ROINU, which is part time, a 6 week course, and then followed by an internship and interviews? What
Mhm.
other, maybe grad school is not the right option. What other tips might you have for them?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at, maybe just doing your own research and teaching yourself a little bit. For example, I created a website for my portfolio, right? So I took the time to, do a free Wix website and I kind of taught myself how to do all those, design it and, have like the SEO and whatnot. You can learn a lot from creating a portfolio website and then that
Hmm.
can actually be used for when you're, sending your resume off. I always include my website because it has a lot of the work that I've done on there. Looking at, some different campaigns that, successful campaigns that companies have done. For example, one that I was just talking about was when, I don't know if you remember this, but IHOP changed their name to IHOB on,
Oh,
all the social media, and they said that they were changing to burgers, but it was like this huge digital thing that they had done. And so, looking at some case studies and just seeing what works, or even reading some books. I know that you and I have talked a little bit about some different books, shared some different titles of books that we've read, and I think there's a lot of really good lists of, important things. But I know that sometimes, people don't have a lot of time to dedicate to, doing an entire course or the money to, go back to school to get another degree. But I think if you're really passionate about learning more, finding time to take in information in small bits, I still think that that's really important. And whatever method works best for you. Sometimes people don't like to read. So maybe it's, watching some videos of different case studies online. I think the internet gives us so much information. You just have to be willing to take in that information and process it and kind of, learn from it, in a sense, to be ready to apply it, see what worked and just having more information that, you can use to create is never a bad thing. So I think just soaking as much information up as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maya.
Mhm.
This was fantastic. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
shout
Thank you
out
so much
for
for
the,
having me.
and yeah, and shout out for the logo design too.
Yes, I know, I saw it on here, I love it, it looks great.
It does look awesome. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.